considering a career in user research, or you're already a user researcher, there might be many aspects you have questions about. It can range from your career path to convincing stakeholders, conveying the importance of research for product development, and eternal questions like how much research is just enough. In this episode, we talk to Dharmesh, who heads research and strategy initiatives at D91 Labs from Setu, a user research lab that documents the financial journeys of people in India. Dharmesh has also been an active contributor of design in public infrastructure projects through iSpirit and also volunteers to organize Design Up Conference and IXDA Bangalore meetups. This is the Hireworthy podcast, and I'm your host, Martha, speaking and asking questions to designers and product managers to learn and grow in problem-solving careers. Let's get started here.
Before getting into questions, would you like to explain where did you begin with user research?
So user research, we had a course called ethnography in NID. And that was my first-hand experience of doing like a full-fledged research. So we had this amazing prof called Anand Sukumaran. So it was almost like a almost a month-long course. So where he talks about saying that, what are the different methodologies in ethnography, and that's the first time you're getting introduced to it. So very interestingly, the first exercise that we did during our ethnography course is to write an autobiography. So an autobiography is where you'll have to sit and write your entire life, probably from what you remember as a kid till now. And people wrote we wrote 40 pages, 40 pages of it. And we had to transcribe it, and we had to kind of code it. So essentially highlight the themes. Okay. And it's a very painstaking exercise, I must tell you. So a lot of my batchmates, they couldn't just read their own autobiographies, because that's when you start realizing that, I've been doing the same kind of mistakes again and again in my life. Be it your relationship with your parents, or be it the relationship you had with your whatever, your other half, your spouse, whoever it is. You know that, you've been doing the same mistake. It could be career choices. The decisions might be different, but the way in how you're thinking and decisions are the same. And people would literally cry. Right? I had some of my friends who said that, can you code it for me? Because I can't read myself. So it's a very painstaking exercise. And so that's how it started. Then we were supposed to identify one focus group or a user group and go do user research with them. So the question was, can we identify the most important sound in their life? And we'll have to come up with insights, do the user research, then come up with the insights, and then convert that insight into some sort of an artifact which represents that sound. So, and we did that. They allowed us to pick the kind of user group based on the languages that we are comfortable with. So I was very comfortable in Tamil. So I went, there was this one temple which was like a Murugan temple, and I went and I picked a bunch of pujaris who were there. And every day I would go there. They would not entertain me. Then every day I would just go sit there. For first 2-3 days, I would just go sit there. Then very interestingly, one person he had just bought a smartphone, and he wanted to open a Facebook account, right? And he didn't know how to open a Facebook account. And that's how I made friendship with him, and I started talking to him. That was a very interesting 2 weeks, and that was my first hand in research, right? And that bug bit me there. From then on, I've been trying to introduce or bring out user research as a part of my work now and then whenever it was possible. And it took me almost 4-5 years till somebody else came and said that this is a job. Do you want to do it full time? In fact, I never went and asked for it. So I was just lucky to be there.
Wow, that's amazing, actually. Coming back to the autobiography thing, did you feel like your friend, did you take it personally? Did it affect you very badly?
Yes, it did. So then from that exercise onwards, it became a habit for me to actually write a lot. I kind of reflect through writing as a way. I type a lot. So I don't do it religiously every day. But whenever there are important incidents when I don't know any of those answers in my life, I go back and look at a lot of the stuff that I typed about different events in my life. Every year I do this thing of saying that, what are the important incidents that happened this year? And I go back and look at it. So it became a habit for me to say that, if I want to find some answers, it has nothing to do with design per se. Like, it has nothing to do with design. For me, even to find some kind of solutions in life, which I can't figure it out, writing and reflection has become a way of it. And I think I'm just fortunate that it comes a little naturally to me.
I think we should all take up writing, but that's
Yeah,
another episode. We should definitely
yeah,
discuss that later. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, now getting to the serious stuff. How
yeah.
did you actually, start a channel of research in an organization? When you mentioned that, how did it actually get begin somewhere? Where was this starting point?
So the starting point was actually the time I spent in ClearTax. In ClearTax, when we were trying to build something completely new in terms of, like, say, a mutual fund for like millennials, or let's say a GST, a new taxation system for accountants and small businesses, we did not have much precedence before. So we had to do research. And it did not happen overnight, but it slowly started happening. Like, whenever there were answers which we couldn't answer with the Google Analytics data or the other tracking data metrics, then I would push towards saying that, can we go and talk to people, right? So the first thing that I did was, I did not say that, design research is something only designers should do. I would actually sit with the PMs, and we would kind of frame the questionnaires, and I was actually giving them all the tools they were comfortable with. Okay, you're not comfortable with recording and transcribing. Okay, I'll give you an Excel sheet. Rather than, so what happens is, when you go and talk to people, that's the data that you get. Then you come and transcribe, and then from that you get the insights. So you get the themes. Like, most of the time, what happens in the field is, what a product manager or a business person is going and talking to people. They don't give you the data; they directly give you the insights. So I was trying to say that, how do I bridge this gap between a little bit? So I was trying to tell them, I was trying to get into a framework through which I can actually get the data rather than the insights. This was something that we were doing informally. And then I came across this tool called Dovetail. So Dovetail is this amazing tool where you could, if the entire company is doing research, every team could come and, like, input whatever they spoke to the customer and stuff. I kind of got a buy-in to buy the tool, and I started saying, okay, let's start this as an experiment. So we started with just the product team and the design team, where whomever we talked to, whatever mode we talked to, we just started putting together all the data points, right? And then slowly we allowed other folks to start tagging into it. So people will highlight a certain anecdote and say, oh, this is an app problem. So this is a concept problem, right? Or this is a navigation problem. And then we started seeing the value towards it. And then the tool was rolled out for all the teams across the company. And that's how a lot of data started generating. And I think even today, kind of ClearTax follows having Dovetail as a tool, where, it becomes this one cumulative brain of knowledge and insights of all the different products. I was just there in that mood, and then as when I kind of met Sahil and Nikhil, is where they actually told me. In fact, I didn't tell them. So they actually told me that, I was kind of looking forward to saying that, oh, I would go to another organization where I would be a lead designer. I was probably looking to move into the fintech space itself, because I really love the space. But they told me the kind of problem statement that was given me is, like, can we build a community around design and fintech? This was the two words that was given to me. And I started learning about what is the kind of work that they have done in the past and stuff. Like, I was very impressed. So it was almost like a blind faith that I jumped into it, because I knew that it's an API platform. There is not much interface-ish sort of a work that you would go forward. But I had all the faith in them. They said that, we'll figure it out. This is what we want to do. We want to build a community. So I had actually a lot of questions around saying that, why do you want to do this? And, is this something that you really want to invest in at this point in time, while you just start a company and stuff? In fact, my founders convinced me, saying this is something that we definitely want to do, and it'll add value to us in the longer run. And once I started getting convinced is when we started saying that, okay, what will be the form? What will be the structure? And that is when I took back some of the learnings from my ethnography course that I did in NID. And I did like one sample interview, right? I said that, okay, let's do this one. So the first interview we did was somebody we know in the office and stuff like that. And then we did a bunch of them. And then people started, that's when it actually became surprising for me, is that, that's the first time it was not the designers who kind of read it first. It was actually the business folks who read it first. So they were founders, and somebody started forwarding me the WhatsApp message. Hey, this is something you wrote. It has been forwarded. It has been circulated inside our company WhatsApp group. And it was either a product manager, it was either a business head, or it was the CEO of the company, right? And that's when I started realizing, oh, there is no point in shouting saying we should be doing research. The moment you do the research and show, everybody understands what does it mean. That's how I started, right? In fact, my founders started seeing the value in it, and they say, okay, let's scale up this process, right? And that's how we started adding interns to it, and we started hiring full-time positions, and then a lot of other stuff started coming into picture. Now we are at a point where they gave me a hint, and I picked it up, and now I made it into a small community, like a small framework and stuff. Now the company is coming back to me and asking, saying that, hey, how does this can add value back to Setu, what we do? And now that's the phase we are in, figuring out, saying that, how do we actually gather all these insights and build actually new kind of APIs that these people would eventually want.
So you truly prove that just take it till you make it, and then the company will absolutely take it up completely.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Actually, into the question that where should research report to, and what size of company role does it make sense in?
So I strongly believe that research should not be within the design team. So then you are constrained with only saying that, whatever my insights that I'm kind of building, then it's going to go back to making a decision in an app or some sort of a digital interface. So I look at it like this. Like this is how we have structured research also inside Setu, is where we have clearly said D91 will be like a research agency inside the organization. Any team can come with a request and go back with a set of data. I believe that, it should be horizontal that way, where the research team sits across the different teams. And let's say tomorrow, if a marketing team comes and asks you something, you should be able to help them with what kind of messaging they should have, right? The business team comes and asks them, then you should be able to give them behavioral insights, right? If the design team comes and asks you, you should be able to give them usability insights, right? So you keep building this core set of this data, and as and when it's almost like an SQL query, right? You put the query and you get back the data, right? And your research team should work like that, right? So that's how ideally a research team should be placed, right? Now a lot of people might have a challenge of saying that, that's probably not all of my stakeholders understand it that way. It's okay, you can start with small, go one step ahead, and also suggest the business teams what is possible with this kind of user research, right? Unless and until, like I said, you show them, they'll not know it. And also we should always take them as partners as opposed to looking at as you versus me, right? That's what I believe in. And I think when it comes to the size of the company, which company should have the ideal size, it's a very tricky question actually. When you are in the empathy stage, like say there are like these 5 stages of the startup, as you see in the lean analytics. So there is empathy, there is virality, there is stickiness, then there is scale, and then there is revenue, right? So empathy stage is the first stage, is where you're trying to figure out the product market fit, right? So most of the times founders actually do the work of what you call the researchers today, right? They actually go talk to the people, they're figuring out, I had this one idea, will this actually work or not, right? So they talk to the different stakeholders. They do exactly the same process. They might not be doing it in a way that other people can consume, but they're doing it for themselves, right? That you don't need to do transcriptions, that you don't need to do analysis and stuff. All of these things is happening inside your mind, right? So when they start the first product and the first product is hit, right, and then they move to the next stages of being virality, right? Now, essentially, when they're talking about the user research, they're essentially saying, bring out the founder's mindset when the company started and keep it alive, right? So essentially, you're trying to say that the curiosity with which we started, can we keep it alive across the different stages of the company? So probably I would say that, the stage does not matter, right? Depending on what is the problem set that you're solving. It depends on that. Let's say, for example, I know this company called Vahan, right? They're doing some amazing stuff in terms of they're like LinkedIn for blue collar workers, right? It's a relatively young company, and I see the founders and the founding team investing in user research right now, right? because they believe that they're building something completely different from what does not exist in market, right? So they think that it's a good good investment to hire a user researcher right now, right? But on the other hand, let's say if I am building a cab aggregator or a food tech startup, like a food delivery startup, I will not hire a user researcher till I hit a plateau, right? Because I know that there is an already a charted path by some of these big people, right? It's easy for me to walk the path. I might have operational challenges, I might have cash challenges, but I will not have product challenges per se, right? So it completely depends on what is the problem statement that and what is the mindset.
Okay, that actually gives a very clear picture on where companies should start investing in user
Yeah.
research, right? That actually makes sense. So when they should know where to start, then they should know how to hire. How do we actually hire a user researcher?
So user researchers generally either they come from the as they could be a designer, or sometimes they could actually come from humanities background. Now, how do you hire a user researcher? Is first you need to actually write down a detailed JD as saying that what are the kind of tasks this individual would do day in and day out. We can actually classify them and saying that okay, is this a question that is going to come that needs to be answered, right? Or is there a requirement for somebody to be full time in my organization? That's the first call that you need to take, right? If you think that okay, I'm just stuck right now, but if I get an answer for this, then I might not need a researcher, then you shouldn't hire a user researcher, right? But if you're talking about saying that oh, I'm in this completely new domain which nobody has explored, but we want to explore it in a completely by building new sets of products, then you should hire a user researcher. And then you should actually kind of know, okay, if the user researcher comes on board, how will you determine the success of that individual, right? Now what kind of metrics you will track, right? You should actually be very clear and actually understanding what is the metrics that you should track. And if I know that okay, if this research researcher is a good investment, if this metrics impact or not, right? So I know a lot of times where the researcher is hired, and then you have a clash with the different product teams and marketing teams saying that oh, you've done only 4 interviews. How do we take care, how do we take decisions just based on these 4 interviews, right? But that is not the problem with the user researcher, right? The company organization should know, right? You invested in it, you brought them in, and they hired, right? And then if it comes the question of I don't think I should believe in this research, then I think then we're wasting a lot of people's time, right? You should know that what kind of questions you should go for market research, what kind of questions you want to do it in user research, and understanding of that actually becomes very, very important. And just because everybody else is hiring, one should not hire.
But I want to understand a little more deeper aspect. Like, for example, we do have a lot of self-taught designers. We have a lot
Right.
of designers who are, as you said, from humanities background or from, say, proper, human computer interaction background, who have done anthropology and all of them. How, when we actually are looking to hire somebody, what are, as you said, metrics? What are the things that I should look for to hire somebody?
Right. Definitely, you could see if there is a pre-existing work or not, right? But in most cases, probably they did not get an opportunity, but they're curious enough, they're willing to explore and all of those, right? So in that way, what we generally do is one of the things that we follow in Setu is do like a collaborative brainstorming. In the collaborative brainstorming, we pick up a topic and we ask them to, let's say, design a research. So then we are trying to look at saying that there will be a lot of unknown pieces, and I'm looking for what are the kind of question that the person is asking. So is he asking is he going towards the right direction? He or she are they going towards the right direction, right? Or are they taking judgmental calls? So that is something, it's very important. That's why a lot of times the self-awareness also comes into picture, right? So for a very simple example, saying that so you're using I'm talking to a SME person, like a kirana store guy, right? So I'm asking him saying that which language do you use your app? Okay, he says in English, right? If I ask him that why aren't you comfortable using the native language, like he says no, I prefer English, right? So Now, a good researcher should be able to uncover the answer for it. What is the next question that you would ask without pissing him off? No, so then that or sometimes you could just assume that when the moment he says that I use the app in English, you could just take that as a face the whatever he says as a truth and come back. But how much deeply the researcher is going to something, we kind of get to understand in the brainstorming session, right? We ask them to design a research, like we give it on the spot, like we give them a particular question, we give them a challenge, and I actually sit with that person, and we both actually do like a jugalbandi sort of a thing, right? So I know most of the data, and whenever the person is stuck, I actually reveal a little bit, and then I see if there's a spark within that individual, and then they're taking it forward or not, right? And after a point, if they kind of become blank, then probably they need much more practice, or they need like much more. The curiosity is probably not there.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if you don't mind, one question that I actually do ask in this certain context is, you are somebody who understands user research completely, right? And there are organizations that are trying to hire user researchers without probably understanding. There is somebody, probably a manager or a HR person or somebody who's doing these aspects. Ideally, that is not the scenario, but mostly that is a scenario. So what would be their guiding principle in these aspects?
So, but there are some amount of basic principles that I kind of follow, like the guiding principles that I follow. One definitely is the humility, right? The empathy that the individual kind of shares with the other person. And second is the curiosity that the individual kind of has. It does not have to be with respect to the job, and that's how the person is. Then they kind of become much better user researchers or researchers in general, uh, as relatively when somebody who's not, and it's kind of force fitted or is it learned, right? So it's how do we say it? Like sometimes you're just that sort of a person, right? So this is what I call, like you have like a cat like curiosity, right? You put them in environment, they'll go and explore whatever it is, what is this, what is that, and stuff like that. When you're talking about some data points, they're not taking it for names, it's actually trying to understand what is in deeper. I kind of screen and actually give the individuals whom I want to talk to. But if the people, the hiring managers or the HRs directly, they want to interact with the user researchers, it is definitely a challenge. Or probably you could ask them to create like a small Google form with the kind of questions, with the kind of attitude that you want to look at, to see that if they kind of fit into that role, right? But I don't have like a clear answer for it. It's still gray area.
Yeah, tough questions, but
Yeah.
we need answers. Do you actually look for, degrees or self-taught? I know from context that it doesn't matter from what you're saying. You're looking for curiosity. But when it comes to a formal hiring process, is that really a minimum bar you are looking at?
It's actually not. So ideally, it is not. In case if they have experience, why did they choose this question? And even if I can have a conversation around a particular artifact, in this case, it could be a research project, then I would be much more happy to have them as an part of my team, right? But if none of them exists, if the degree does not exist, let's say, for example, somebody sends of which has just, let's say, UX design or UI design as a part of it, and they have done a bit of research, okay, as a part of the app design, right? It's very difficult. That probably the small research that you did has would have been like, say, 2 days, 3 days, or understand what project you research. Did you frame questionnaires? Did you go and talk to them? Can you show me the transcription? But if you said no, I did not have time, I just spoke to a bunch of people, then yeah, I mean, that is not something that we could take it as a proof to move forward, because most of the people that I speak to talk about this, right? Oh, we did research. What did you do? Then when you get into the details, then it kind of, the lines kind of blur, right? Because it's in that 5% with research, so everybody kind of start their journey with what they call the research. Honestly, I don't know, I'm not sure. If then what happens is, then I as an a lot more energy and resource into training that person. We just don't have that luxury at this point in time, right? So all of those things, and there especially your pay also comes into picture, right? So then this idea of the pay also comes into picture. Yes, let's say for example, in an organization, if they're starting a user research team, for them also it's an experiment, right? So, but if you're saying that, oh, I do not have like an experience in user research before, I am ready to kind of learn user research without a pay cut, then these things become much more challenging, right? Of course, user research probably today's context, they don't earn as much as your UI, UX, motion graphic designers and all, right? Because it's a relatively new field in this age of startups, even though like bigger companies have had user researchers. For the startups, this is like a new thing, right? And they just started investing into it, right? So you cannot expect the same pay without having a previous experience.
So that makes sense. So you can't compare your pays to other titles in the same field, and it is not
Correct.
fair on the
Yeah.
company as well.
Yeah. So that also challenging, because a lot of people would have wanted to be a user researcher when they just graduated out of college, right? Here I'm just talking about design graduates. When they graduated out of college, and a lot of my friends and batchmates, they moved out of research because there were not enough research opportunities at that point. So now they moved into all the different other sorts of disciplines, which could be UI, UX, or design strategy, service design, whatever. Now, when the user research field is actually blooming, they would want to try their hands on. But now the other financial commitments might not allow them to go back to it, right? And that is also something that I kind of look at it as an cue, where to see that, hey, is the person actually interested in it? They would take a plunge and they would take a pay cut and they would be interested to learn, right? When people come with that sort of attitude, then it's very difficult to avoid, right? Then you definitely will have to give them a chance, right? And that's how a bunch of them who actually worked with us, who have collaborated with us, they've gone out of their way, right? They would have been other product design. They would come and say that, I would like to volunteer for free. I just want to learn research, because they don't have to do that, right? It's exciting to see such folks. Yeah.
End of the day, you're looking more for enthusiasm and that curiosity, and you will take a bet on them in the future once they are, they're proving themselves worthy of that bet.
So if you look at research as a long term game, then it's going to be amazing, right? So I have this hypothesis, just to deviate a little bit, right? So let's say, for example, you are a user researcher, and you are not improving your skill sets. Let's say your skill sets hold the same, right? You will still be valued much more than what you're valued today 5 years from now, right? Why? Because the rest of the people are losing the art of conversation. It's not because you're becoming better, right? Since other people are losing the art of conversation, you holding the skill set will be much more valued in future as opposed to today, right? But on the other hand, the rest of the skill sets that you probably hold today, and we are very proud as a designers, which could be primarily defined by the frameworks and the tools that we hold, it will get automated, right? But still, at the end of the day, understanding human beings is one part which will be very difficult to be automated, at least in the near future. When I talk about near future, maybe like 10, 20 years, right? So it's a good time for all the people who want to take like this high risk but high reward, right? It's a good time.
That actually answers part of your thing where many people ask, why are you so critical about designers?
Yeah.
But that's a it's a very valid point, because end of the day, we are going to be overtaken by, not by robots, but by business people who want to make sure that the design is moving ahead, or research is moving ahead, because they are like, okay, I want to deliver to the market. That's it. That's what it is, right? End of the day.
Yeah. So if they are willing to learn research, why are we willing to learn business? Is my question, right? We should be, right? I'll give you an example. I was recently going through this upgrade ka product management course, and you know what? 70% is just design syllabus, right? It has no difference. And I'm like looking at it, oh, what is the difference is going to be between UI, UX, and this particular course? Then it's just that, this product management course is just giving you an introduction to the tools. And in UI, UX, they're teaching you the tool in depth. And now you take a decision, what are we defined by, right? And they have much more power, and they have much more say in the organization, and they can even show the throughput, whereas we will still be holding to just tools, right? So that's a challenge,
Yeah,
right?
awesome. I'm glad somebody's speaking about this because this is a realistic conversation that we usually have, right?
Yeah.
And when, as you grow in design, initially you might be enamored by, hey, tools, hey, prototyping tools, and this. But if you
Hmm.
continue to stay there, as you said, right, there is a risk of you losing out on, more opportunities, better aspects of design,
Yeah.
and all of these
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that we've just said that, okay, we're losing on this thing, I can't just answer that. Why are you so critical of designers? Please tell me why.
Yeah, I think I partially answered that. Okay, so but there is this one example that I give, right? So there are two aspects to it. Like one is the mindset aspect, and one is the skill set aspect, right? So let's talk about the mindset. I have like two examples, like two small stories that you can talk about this. So let's say in the mindset aspect, right? So the story that I keep sharing with my friends is that so imagine there's a security guard, right? So he's like trying to guard a startup office, right? He comes early in the morning. He's the one who opens the door even for the CEO to enter inside, and all the people pass him and get inside. Okay, so what if over a period of time he starts realizing that hey, you know what? I let people in, and I should be the most important person in their organization, right? And we kind of find it a little funny, right? Because it does not hold true, right? So similarly, when you talk about saying that, hey, you know what? I'm the one who's designing the interface that a user uses. So I'm the one most important person in this organization. I want to be changing the world. Now, this is something I don't agree with, right? And that is where I feel that we as a researchers, we should be a little more empathetic. We should have a little more humility to say that it's not just because I designed this interface or I created this platform people are using it, but there is a whole universe of people behind this who are making it work. We're just lucky to represent them, right? And I have a problem when people lose humility there. And I strongly believe research being as much as inclusive as possible, right? And what happens, and more I start like, and I see like there are these two different worlds also that I could see, that, where there are then there's a persona of who a designer should be, and that is mostly defined by the tools that I use, the gadgets that I use, and the apparel that I wear, and all of those, right? And so I have been asked so many times when I walk into an interview, you don't look like a designer. And I'm like, what does a designer look like? It's like, no, that cool glasses and the t-shirt. And I'm like, God, right? And that's the kind of perception. And a lot of people are very happy to wear that, right? And when you say this, what you're actually emulating as a community, what we're emulating is, you know what? For we are exclusive group and we are not inclusive, right? And that's the kind of message I start feeling, right? And and that is why I'm like critical about certain aspects of design, or the certain messages that go on social media, or certain blog posts that I read about it and stuff. Like, what are we celebrating, right? So the output really is not about the interface that I created. The output is the impact that somebody had in their life. We should be celebrating that, right? And a lot of our medium blog posts, it could be Dribble or it could be Behance, celebrates the designer. I want to celebrate the user, right? Unless that doesn't happen, I'm still going to be very critical of them, right? Because we are still not making any impact or change what we claim, right? Now the second thing is the skill set of it, right? So again, an example of it is to say that imagine your let's say a door doesn't work, right? And you're calling a carpenter, right? So he comes up with this toolkit or a toolbox, right? So he figures out uh, what is the problem, and then he probably takes a spanner or a screwdriver, whatever, and he fixes the problem, right? And you know what? Like each one of us know how to use the tool, but he's not getting paid for using the tool, not knowing for how to use the tool. But he's getting paid to use the right tool at the right time, right? Now the toolbox that he holds is his knowledge kit. Like, so similarly for a designer, what is the toolbox that we are holding, right? So my question that I keep asking again, is the toolbox like say fonts, gradients, tools and all. These are toolbox. Like, shouldn't we be expanding our toolbox? Like, because the toolbox that we are celebrating today to solve problems, there are going to be only limited problems. This is like saying, oh, I have a spanner, now I'm going to go and figure out all the problems with which I can actually solve this problem, right? But only if you expand your toolbox, which is including understanding business, understanding research, understanding marketing, and all of those, right? And this is one way of looking at it. And if you go in the other axis, then you should also look at saying that, what are the future technologies, right? It could be anything from saying conversational interface to AR to VR in another axis. Then that's a set of tools that we need to expand, right? Only with these two axes, if we start expanding, then the scope of design will become bigger. Otherwise, we will just be automated or will be replaced by somebody else, right? So that is the only thing. Like, till these things are not fixed, I'm just going to be critical of designers all the time.
I totally understand, because that is kind of one of my gripe as well with the design community, because we tend to speak about, hey, these two design tools versus these two, there are memes around it, and I'm like, this bigger world out there. It's fun, definitely fun to have that fun, but you can't live in that world, right?
Yeah. So some of the strong questions that we should actually be asking. I've been following Rahul Matan, right? So Rahul Matan is a very famous a technology lawyer, and he's a privacy specialist and stuff like that. One of his talks, he was talking about the idea of consent, right? So consent has traditionally been this contract between an individual, either two individuals, or an between you and the organization, right? So, but in the ever-changing world, the consent needs to change its form and shape. I'll tell you why. Let's say you have Alexa at your home, right? You as an individual signed up for it with terms and conditions, right? So you have let Alexa hear whatever that you're saying, like the moment you tell the term Alexa. Now imagine I come to your home. I never had that consent with Alexa, right? So what is the right that I hold or Alexa holds to hear me, right? Now, how will you solve this problem? There's no solution for it. You cannot design an app, you cannot design an interface for it, and this has to be a larger level problem. So that is where Rahul talks a lot about saying that, the idea of a consent between two parties needs to change. It needs to be a set of probably principles in policy making, right? Now, will you say that, this is not a part of design? I don't know. Like, no. So if you have to actually get an intervene and change certain aspects like this, then you have to move beyond your digital interface and look at other set of things, right? So I was recently reading this one Twitter thread about this one lady who kind of opens up her DM for anybody in and around Chennai, for any women who needs to get advice on pregnancy, or whoever wants to ask for an IPL, right, for accidental pregnancy, right? So the Twitter thread was kind of what eye-opening, because she just talks about saying that there's only a handful of pharmacies in Chennai where people like if a woman walks up to the pharmacy and asks for an IPL, she'll be handed over. Else, rest of the people will either refuse it and they'll judge you, right? How can you design an experience where a woman can not be judged irrespective of whatever she's asking for, right? Now that's an experience. How would we design that, right? So similarly, even during this times of where you need to maintain social distancing, is why, because we have always been designing for being inclusive, right? How do you now design for being away from each other, right? The moment you flip the thought around, right, then now you're seeing a lot of this hacks around how in the supermarkets they have this distancing, like, so they have put like this number one, and after a feed they put number two, and people will have to stand in those distances and all of those things, right? So as the world changes, the requirements are going to change, and our mindset needs to change. Yeah. So I think we'll most probably go there. We should go there.
That's actually true, because in my opinion, it's a system of things that should enable your users to be actually, they should feel good about it, no matter this context they're in. Forget feeling good. It's more that we have enabled them so that they move forward in their lives and they're done with their job. Let's not hold them and say that you have to use my app because it's so useful to you. No, they have finished their job. Allow them to please let them live their lives. So that's also great. Yeah.
So one additional, because this is a very interesting, very Indian example that that we were talking about during. So I took this course in Takshashila about public policy, and that they told us about this example, saying designing the enrollment of Aadhaar, right? So essentially, in Aadhaar enrollment, what happens is, like, they take your details, and then you do your fingerprints, finger scanning, like all your 10 fingers need to be recorded and your iris needs to be recorded, right? What happens is, let's say, whenever the center, enrolling center, the person who's actually enrolling, every time when he starts the enrollment, he has to put his 10 fingers and scan first, and then the individual starts scanning it. Do you know why? Can you guess?
Probably there's a system that says that there should be authorization or something like that.
No, that one is like too high-fi. So essentially, we need to understand, like, the incentives for probably how this person is getting paid. He's getting paid based on the number of enrollments, right? Now, if you say that the incentive is to pay based on the number of enrollments, he has no incentive to wait for people to come and put their hand. He will just put his own fingers and complete the registration, right? To just avoid that, so they had to first make this person actually scan the fingerprint, and they will cross-check in the local system, right? So whenever you had the Aadhaar enrollment, you would have given an Aadhaar enrollment number, and your final number would have come at the end, right? So the time taken in the between is to actually take your fingerprints and scan it cross-verify across the billion people to make sure that it's unique, and that is why there was a time lag. So, but locally to verify, they would verify it right across the person who was actually scanning the enrollment, right? To make sure that, he or she does not put their finger into it, right? Now, how do you design for that?
Wow. Okay, imagine the efficiency of that system, like that has to do that cross-checking, making sure that, the whole thing that goes through. Oh my God. Wow.
Similarly, remittances. Why should we take like fingerprint authentication, and why can't we have like a card, or why can't this card do the job and stuff like that? So they gave me, we were discussing a very interesting example, right? So let's say a migrant worker, somebody was working in Bangalore, and he sends remittances back to his home, right, in the post office, right? So in the post office, essentially, let's say the guy's father goes and gets the money, right? When the guy's father goes and gets the money on behalf of the person's wife, what they would ideally do, or in most of the cases, what they probably might do is, like, say he sends 1,000 rupees, the father might pocket like 100 rupees and give back only 900 rupees to the wife, right? And he might say that, this is how much he had sent, right? Now you'll have to understand the dynamics inside a family in a tier 2 or tier 3 city, and even if she knows that, the person has sent 1,000 rupees, she cannot raise her voice or ask questions here, right? The moment you say that, a fingerprint authentication is needed, there's no other choice than the woman to come herself, right? And now the other person, whoever the other representative in the family, is forced to take that person, and now the money is directly handed over to them. So all these design challenges are also something very excited about, or something that we should actually look forward to doing it more of it, actually.
Yeah, that actually makes sense, because you're actually addressing the core needs that somebody has, instead of, the environment that we are surrounded with. It's probably all taken care, right? We have internet. We are actually, look at our current context. We're very happy. We're privileged to actually sit here and in an internet running. I think the next world war is going to be if we don't have internet. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen. And if we do not take care of the people who are actually going to be affected very badly, the food industry or the people who are on daily wages, I don't know how they're dealing with this aspect. And that empathy should come from those things.
Yeah. The incentive alignment is a huge thing when it comes to actually designing for humans or designing for behavior. The moment you change a little bit of incentives, the entire system, like, it's looked upon it in a different way.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I think we should elaborate that separately in a bigger topic.
Yeah. Sure.
You've looked at multiple fields, and now that I understand that you also look at policy and all of these aspects. So where do you look for talent apart from the existing ones?
Other fields also where you see exciting people. Let's say, for example, law is one of them, right? So lawyers have this curiosity of going deep into a particular topic, understanding, and they read a lot, right? And they also understand the human side of things, right? That's a good place. Economics is a great background, right? So they understand incentives, alignment, and all of this. So the only challenge is, for most of these guys, the output might not necessarily be an app suggestion, or they might not think through the interface, right? So they might gather a bunch of insights. If you ask them what will be the output, what will be the outcome of it, they might say there could be a policy change, right? There could be a new law, right? But they're not thinking, saying that, this is that's what I started feeling as a difference between the other set of researchers that I interact with in this field versus me, right? And I can clearly see the difference, because most of the people are either they stop at just giving the insights, personas, or they're looking at policy suggestions. But since I come from the UX background or the design background, I'm also thinking through the interfaces. Okay, if this comes into picture, which are the organizations which will be affected, right? Who all can introduce this feature, right? And that is why I'm very excited when I take this particular research and go to either PhonePe or ZestMoney or Razorpay, when I'm sitting and talking with all the researchers or designers there, and it's completely exciting, right? But I'm able to actuate that as a market intervention, right? So this is also something commonly we talk about in the policy making course, right? So there are 4 boxes, right? So the first box is your government, right? Then the second box is your market. The third box is your community, right? So when you talk about community, it could be your apartment society, it could be your religion, it could be the temple gathering, whatever it is, right? And the fourth is individual, right? So whatever intervention that you do, it will affect one of it, right? So most of the people are looking at it from the government lens, and we are just looking at it from the market lens, right? Or an individual's lens. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense, because you are basically saying that any person that who comes into, say, making sure that they do a certain research and then they go into certain insights, you are saying that they should be able to gather that insight and give you a solution that is something that is business implementable, and that
Correct.
is on you are expecting that from a designer, or is that something that should happen in this
That
scenario?
is something that a uniquely a designer will bring in, as compared to a person who comes from a humanities background, right?
Got it.
If somebody comes from the humanities background, they should be willing to learn this side of things, right? If they're
Okay.
coming from economics, or if they're coming from law, or if they're coming from any other field like arts background or whatever it is, they should be open to learning this field. They need to think through the technology.
Got it. That actually makes sense. Now that we are talking about insights, the most
Mhm.
common favorite word for everybody, how do we actually, you know, convey these insights? How do we convey them to different business teams and make them, understand that this is what we have learned from these things? Are there some top things that come to your mind in these aspects?
Yeah. So one of the things that easily people will be able to relate with is the stories, right? So that is where actually your persona should help, right? So personas is not really like a form where you at the end of the process that you fill, but it should organically evolve, right? So today I am talking about, let's say, kirana stores, right? I interviewed 10 of them, right? I can actually write a fictional story which will all these 10 people will be able to relate with in some point or the other, right? So I'm talking about, let's say, even as I when I speak, like I talk about saying, oh, it's a store that is run by husband and wife. They have 2 kids. The store in the afternoon, the wife takes care of. In the morning, this person comes in, and I can just write it, right? And you can take the story and show it to all of these 10 people, and they'll say, okay, this is probably 50% true. This is 70% true. All the challenges he's talking about is true. It even happens to me. It does not matter whether I'm Manjunath or Ravi or Guru or whoever it is, right? But the ideology is the same, right? Now that story, what is that story for your business, your context, and the problem that you're working out, is something you'll have to figure it out.
Okay.
And that kind of taking that story and market it left, right, and center inside your organization, right? And that should go as different it should go as a pamphlet, it should go as an A4 sheet, it should go as an A1 sheet. Just publish the story and tell all the people that you're just working for them, right? So it should probably say that, the next time when a product manager is taking a decision, let's say you give this character fictional name, like it could be Manjunath, right? Then the person that you should ask is like, say, hey, is this something that Manjunath wants, right? Then you are not just debating randomly saying, oh, the person that I spoke to, they will need it, and the person that the chai store downstairs, or the grocery store near my home. We are not randomly discussing these stereotypes, right? We are actually building a good stereotype. That's it.
Oh wow, that's nice. That actually makes much more sense. Yeah. So, do you mean to say that creating a singular narrative for everybody to latch onto and give have that base to start with? Is that something that you are saying?
I'm saying, like, it cannot be just one narrative, but if there are like a bunch of personas, right, that emerge, right? So then you need to figure out whom are we talking about at that point in time, right? So, for example, let's take a interesting example of, let's say, Swiggy Pop, right? So where it's just a meal for one person, there is no delivery charge, and all of those things, right? So that will be a special persona by itself, right? So where you're talking about saying, people who do not have time, do not want to spend a lot of money in it, because if you're saying I'm eliminating kind of my delivery charge, and then these people are open to actually choose between a preselected meals, right? So that's a persona by itself, right? As opposed to saying that, where you have curated a bunch of luxury brands and where you're explaining the features of each of these food and how they are crafted and made, that's a different persona, right? So we just need to be clear about whom are we targeting about. So if you're saying that, if for example, this is a very common example, so I'm picking this, where you say that, I'm talking about a guy or a person who is actually looking for a luxurious brand, a luxurious eatery, then you should also need to understand what is his lifestyle like, right? Is he frequently actually going to do that, or is he once in a time he's doing it? If he's doing it once in a blue moon, what are the occasions in which he's doing it? You need to understand things around what happens at ordering also. That is what I'm talking about when you say building a stereotype.
Okay, that actually is a lovely way to understand a person, because end of the day you have clearly laid the difference between what different types of products will have different types of customer segments and consumers and all of these things. That actually makes sense, and of course personas built into them. So how much time do you spend on the field because of this?
How much time I spend? Actually, you know what? In the user research, the time I spend on the field is the least, right? Because most of the time actually goes around in all the prep work that we do before, right? So what I say by prep work is essentially, we start by building a framework. We start by building, why should I do this research? Then there is a framework that comes into picture. Then there is a bunch of questionnaire that comes into picture. Then there is a questionnaire testing phase that goes, right? Where I randomly pick a bunch of people and then I test these questionnaires out. That is where I'm open to going back and correcting it, right? And then we go to the field, right? Inside the field also, like, I need to figure out what time works for them, what areas they are located in, how do I optimize it by saying, once if I go out in the field, can I do 2-3 interviews and come back, and all of this other hullabulla we do around us takes a lot of time, right? Actually going and sitting and talking to them actually takes only 30 to 45 minutes, right? It doesn't take much, right? And in that we should just listen. I'm telling you, the research is all about just listening. And the problem with most product folks or business folks when they go it is they're looking for one answer, right? So one of the things that I kind of tell all the folks who work with me is to say that, we should ideally give in. And when you actually give in, your body language will tell that. And that's what I figured out, right? So I felt sometimes, people were relatively much more comfortable talking to me versus the other person. Then I figured out that, the other person is trying to look for an answer. I am just not looking for an answer. I'm just here to listen to you, right? And so that will give it out, right? And we ask a lot of questions which might or might not actually help you in that research, right? So for example, I'll tell you an example. So we were doing this one research in Bombay with some person, and I asked this question, like, what's your aspiration in life? Like, what do you want to do, right? And he actually told me that he wants to produce a Bollywood movie, or he wants to direct a Bollywood movie, right? And we were all very surprised, like, this came out of nowhere, right? And he's like, he himself continued saying that, oh, you're surprised, right? And he said that, see, I don't want to make this big Bollywood movies like, oh, this Aishwarya Rai, Ranbir Kapoor and all of those things. I just want to make a small movie where only like 10 15 people watch it. Might run in like 10 20 theaters, and I'm fine with it, but I just want to make it, right? And he went on for the next 5 6 minutes to explain why he really likes movies and stuff like that, right? So when we completed the interview, when it came out and we were just discussing how the interview went, and this other person who was with me, he asked me saying that, hey, why did you ask that question? What does it mean for our research? It doesn't mean anything for our research, but it means a lot for him, right? Let's say for in the past 10, 20 years, how many people would have asked him this question, right? This guy who is somewhere in his early 50s or late 40s, has a wife, has 2 kids, and has been working all along. And most of his friends that he has told us are only his friends who he has been trading community and all of those things. How many people sit with these people, a person like him, and ask him what is his aspiration? Because everybody is beyond a point in your life, everybody is looking for something to get out of you, right? There are few arenas where they actually express themselves without being judged. And I think as a researcher, that is where you should be able to be comfort them, right? So we try and ask a lot of other questions other than just the research questions alone, right? And that is to comfort them. It doesn't matter whether they're getting an incentive, whether they are being paid for this research. It does not matter. You just need to comfort them, right? You need to understand. We start by asking that, where do you come from? What's your native language? What schooling did you do? We are not asking because that, oh, we want to point out and say that, oh, you did not do schooling, right? So, but we are trying to understand that, what is the background that you're coming from. Like, then we will not ask any questions that is inappropriate, right? So very interestingly, for example, the first time when we went and did the research in a village, so we wanted to understand what are the kind of appliances that the individual is using at home, right? And we were lucky enough to go to their home and actually do this interview. And we had these cue cards, right? We said that, hey, let's list down all of these cue cards and let them pick out what they want. And imagine we sitting in an AC room in Bangalore and we're figuring out what are the options. So we, of course, eliminated some obvious ones, like, we did not take AC, but microwave oven and all of those things. But even the simplest one, like, washing machine and fridge, they did not have, right? And when we actually went and sat in the home, we could not put that cue card out because we clearly knew this person or this individual did not have a washing machine, because the home is that much only. Like, I could clearly see that's what the home contains, right? The moment you go and put this cue card where you say, do you have a washing machine, right? First of all, one, the lady would slap me, right? Second of all, it's completely inappropriate to, like, go out and ask this question, right? And sometimes we also learn on the field during all of these times, and sometimes we might completely screw it up, and it's okay, right? So the time we spend on field is actually very less, right? So some people might not answer, some people will answer a lot. Like, what you think might be half an hour could go on for 2 hours, and that is where you need to direct the conversation a little bit here and there. But otherwise, the time we spend on the field is very, very less. If you plan it well, even a biggest of the project, that you could do it in like 2 weeks of field. Like, at that in a day at max, you can do 2 or 3 interviews. You can't do beyond that. Then you'll get completely tired.
That actually gives a great view, because a lot of people assume that research means being on field. There is a lot around that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And very important aspect, because we're talking about doing research with other things. How do you actually differentiate user research and market research? Drama question, but still required.
Yeah, so I try and keep it very simple. right? Uh, what happened and when it happened, both of these kind of questions you can do it using market research, right? You can send a questionnaire, what happened, when it happened, something very specific that you can articulate and tell it. So there is a single source of truth that everybody could understand. It can be quantified and all of those things, right? Why it happened and how it happened is something you need to do qualitative analysis, right? So you need to go further, ask stories behind it, right? So let's say, for example, we were recently looking into the Design Up survey, right? So I had a sneak peek of the research report in UX Now that Jaydat had presented, right? So there were a lot of interesting insights that had come out, right? So for example, 50% of the people who kind of were doing who were doing designs in masters came from engineering, right? So then that what happened. Now the question of why it happened, that survey cannot answer. No, you need to go and talk to some people who were engineers who turned into designers and ask them, right? I mean, of course, you will have some sort of an assumption, but you'll have to ask them, right? So other 50% of the engineers who were in design did not do masters, right? So now you'll have to look at, say, the timeline also. At least if I am a researcher looking at this particular data set, right? Saying that 50% of the people did masters and then they are designers. 50% of the people did not do masters, but they are designers, right? Now the second question I want to ask as a researcher is, what is the age? What is the timeline? Right? So if the timeline says that people who were before 2011 or let's say 2010, where before all this the breaking of the Flipkart and all of this e-commerce internet companies coming into picture, before that the entire concept of a UI UX designer did not exist, right? But there probably the only option was where you had to go and do an NIT degree and everybody went behind that, right? Because there was just only a bunch of companies who were hiring, right? So all these people who are now being in design without doing a degree, now we need to look at their age, right? Are they like post 2015? Are they post your housing period? Are they post or your Flipkart period, where design has already become mainstream, and now the requirement for designers is so high that you don't really need a traditional like a learned background, but they learn it over the job, right? But these are again my hypothesis, right? But to validate it, I will have to go and talk to them, right? So I think that's the difference between market research and qualitative research.
That's actually well put. Do you have any closing notes that you want to share, and you feel that, hey, this is something that everybody should keep in mind or something like that?
Yeah, I think that it's a great time to get into research. If you are somebody who has just gotten into design field, who are just 1 year 2 years into it, and I think you can invest some amount of whatever money or effort into becoming a researcher, and I can promise you it's going to pay off, right? So I was very recently talking to a VC. In fact, he reached out to us and he was talking to us and he was telling me that hey, why are you giving all of these insights for free, right? Right? He was telling me that okay, this is like the golden egg, right? And why giving it for free? And then we had our own kind of rationality of why we are doing this, right? But he told us with something very interesting, saying that look, in few years technology is going to be used out of the box, right? It is going to be democratized, right? And most of so let's say the design components are going to be democratized. They're going to be standard, right? In fact, they would prefer that you use standard interfaces as opposed to reinventing the interface, because the same user was going to use all the other apps, right? So what you will hold as an USP is your user understanding, right? Your ability to understand user, your ability to understand their life, right? And this is going to become USP for so many companies. Now everybody's going to fight for this role, right? And trust me, if you make that jump right now, it's going to bear a lot of fruits 5 years from now, right? And I think all the people who have been thinking a little bit here and there and they're not sure and stuff, I think they should just make the jump, right? I'm happy to connect with the folks and take them through what are the kind of opportunities that are probably available. But I would be happy to see much more researchers coming out of India. Yeah.
That's actually a very good closing point, because end of the day, research is also contextual to where you are
Yeah.
performing it.
Yeah.
So the more context we have within our own 1
Yeah.
billion people, I think we need to actually enable more people to actually take up this thing.
Yeah, and this should be another field where Chinese cannot take over you, because in fact, you know what, like TikTok does more research in India. Like there are a bunch of people who travel from China. They hire local researchers. They go to tier 2, tier 3 cities, and they try and understand the influences there. Right. So the ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, they invest a lot in research, especially for all their apps, TikTok, Hello, everything. Right. And I don't know what is stopping us.
We should not be stopping our own people from exploring these aspects, because who are you building products for? Your own people who are going to be using them. So we definitely need to understand our users better.
Let's take a moment to thank everyone who's helping, especially those on the front lines fighting the pandemic. Doing our bit will help, and we'll get through this as well. We're fortunate to work in software where the work doesn't have to stop. And life shouldn't just carry on like nothing happened either, especially when life demands much more. Almost everyone we know is working from home, finding a new rhythm along with your family and colleagues, and that if it's for the first time, it can be hard. But work cannot always take up the bulk of your day. Take a moment, pause, reflect, and see how you can plan out your future and your career. So, if you have any questions on your career, whether in design or product management, you can reach out to us on our Hireworthy Twitter via DMs, and we'll get your questions answered. You can find the links in the notes below, and I'll be back soon in the next episode with another guest.